Hi and welcome to Institut suédois. My name is Anna Danielsson and I work as a project leader here at the Institute with our temporary exhibitions. Tonight we're going to have a talk about graphic design with some great invited people. We have some non-French speaking people here tonight, so that's why we're going to have this in English. Later on, don't worry if you want to ask questions in French. So this talk tonight is part of the program around our exhibition Keep Smiling, the Printed Universe of Pontus Hultén, that the curator Stina Gromark here with us today has organized and curated. We also have opening tonight, today and until Sunday, an exhibition called Keep Playing, which I know that a lot of you have contributed to. So thank you so much for that. If you haven't seen it yet, the pop-up is upstairs, so you go up the stairs and see it. The pop-up exhibition is open until 9 today, so feel free to go up and see more of it after the talk. And otherwise it's open tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday until 7 every day. So please come and see it. Other infos, tonight we have the cafe that's going to be open until 9:30, so I hope that you want to stay and take a glass with us afterwards. And last info before I give the mic to our guest is that Keep Smiling, the exhibition on Pontus Hultén, will stay open until the 21st of September, so you still have time to see it again and again and again. So come back. Now I will leave you in the hands of our moderator, Jérôme Saint-Lauberger, that will introduce the rest. Thank you so much and welcome.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, first, thank you, Anna. And first, I want to thank you, the Swedish Institute, for the invitation. And Sarah Arenis, the director, as well as Anna Danielsson for organizing this, and of course Stina, who curated the exhibition. So first, maybe I'll introduce. Stina, sorry, you curated the Pontus Hultén exhibition, and you also organized the pop-up exhibition, which means and I think it's important for you that it's not a really curated show, it's more something spontaneous that you were invited to do, and which looks great. So I'm going to introduce quickly our guest. So Stina Gromark is a graphic designer, researcher, teacher or educator, and curator, publisher. I'm probably missing some of it. I think you graduated from the Royal College of Art in London, and you live and work in Paris, mostly within a studio with your partner in London, right? And Oskar Laurin is also a graphic designer. It's really a graphic designer. He's a graphic designer who lives and works in Stockholm, and mostly working in the art and cultural field, doing visual identities, publications, so on and so forth, and is also a publisher and editor within a publishing house called Otsium Books. Camille Baudelaire and Olivia Grandperrin are part, and well, Camille is the founder of the graphic design studio Atelier Baudelaire, which she founded 15 years ago, and she was joined maybe 4 years ago about by Olivia. They're graphic designers as well and researchers, and they're very invested in the intersection between graphic design, research, special or more like let's say exhibition or let's say design in space. I hope I'm once again quick at work. Me. Yeah. So first, I want to question Stina, of course, because I think it's important we get some. You know, what motivated for putting together that show? Yeah, what was your first motivation as a graphic designer, mostly to organize, put together this material? How did it come up? And yeah.
So I was studying in London, and I wrote my dissertation on the collaboration between the artist and the engineer. And one of the case studies that I looked at was the project EAT, Experiments in Art and Technology, that was run by Billy Cleaver. That was an engineer from Sweden, based in New York, and he worked very close with Pontus Hultén. So it was, and they did a lot of projects together. So I think it was the first time I discovered Pontus' name, and I read a little bit, but at the time there was not so much literature on him. But I started to search, and I got fascinated straight away for all his achievements, and especially the spirit of invention and this utopian idea of what art can do for the society. Then maybe a few years later, I was given a book on Jan Melin, which is one of the graphic designers that Pontus worked a lot with. Is maybe the most represented graphic designer in the room. It was a book called Till Exempel, and the foreword was written by Pontus. So then I kind of did a connection between his involvement in graphic design, and then I also had this fascination that was maybe a bit larger, and that really sparked my interest. So I started to collect catalogs, and I read what I could come across, which was not so much at the time. And then when I moved to Paris, I lived just next to the Centre Pompidou. So I went to the Kandinsky library and I said I have a project, and they asked me, okay, so what is the project? I was like, I don't really know, but and they said, well, there's a lot of materials. So I said, yeah, okay, give me everything, because I don't know my question yet. So I spent a lot of time in the basement. I collected, and then I think. So the meeting with the work of him, not as a graphic designer, because he was not a graphic designer, but more someone that put teams together, the initiator of this amazing graphic work. Where was I? Yeah, and then it was more like an aesthetic relationship. I mean, I was really fascinated by the objects, because every object had a different personality or a different output. And I think it was during COVID when we all had a bit more time to think and reflect, and maybe also think of life. And I looked at the work as a whole body of work, and I questioned or asked, how is it possible to produce such a huge range of work that all has such incredible quality, and especially also because he worked with so many different graphic designers. And that was the time when I discovered that actually the red thread that goes through all the work or all the projects, or even, you know, his character, is very linked to anarchism, and that made me feel like, okay, I want to do this and I want to share it with the world. I felt that was really, that made me think that it's important to share it.
And it's an interesting question or idea to do a graphic design exhibition about someone who's not mostly a graphic designer, but mostly a curator, known as a curator and institutions and museum director. So, do you feel he's an author in his way as a commissioner? And I think this question would be interesting to anyone, if anyone wants to answer this, or if you want.
I mean, hello everybody. I think also definitely that you could say that he has a sort of author quality to the commissioning side of graphic design. But I also think he was quite heavily involved in working on the designs. I think he was more involved than a curator normally is today. And I think that the graphic designers were probably also more involved in the content of his catalogs than in all the work. So I think that is what always fascinated me, is this like sort of keeping a very loose idea about like what is your role. And I think that is something that comes quite natural to graphic designers, to sort of like move quite freely between sort of like, can I ask somebody to like commission another text? Can I change the title? Can I choose, like, can I make editorial decisions? And I think that also gives a lot of life. And I think you see that a lot in the exhibition and in the book.
Yes, you want to say something about that question of...
Yeah, I would say yes as well, but I think also it was a totally different era. Well, it was in the same context, economical context, social context, so for sure he had a lot, maybe more freedom to do it, and I don't think we could compare with the situation today. It wouldn't be the same for sure, so, but I don't know that much about Hultén, but I feel that the situation today and our society is not the same.
And I also think that you can say that because Pontus Hultén's mentor, Willem Sandberg, who ran the Aesthetic Museum, he was also a graphic designer. And I think that through witnessing what Sandberg was both doing with the museum as a space, and what that building could do, what programming could happen, having a cafe, having a children's part of the exhibitions, as well as sort of what potential there is in sort of the expanded, like how exhibitions could be expanded through printed matter, and how design could play a role. I think it's really important.
Yes, of course, Sandberg was also both a museum director and graphic designer. Exactly. And what is the figure of Pontus Hultén well identified in Sweden? Is he? I mean, I think people in the art field in France know him, of course, but I mean, in Sweden, what his legacy is.
I mean, I think there's a lot of, like, it depends on who you ask. I think it's also a lot of scandal around him in a way. Like he's been involved with this affair of like selling alleged Andy Warhol pieces. That was still a sort of ambiguous history to that. But I think a lot of people know him as sort of like the father of modern museum. But mainly people who are interested in sort of the art world who are like in that connection. I, for one, like I did not grow up in like a cultural context, but I feel like I was encountering a lot of like effects of Pontus Hultén, but did not know about Pontus Hultén.
Camille and Olivia, Pontus Hultén was working very closely with the artists. He was in a constant sort of a dialogue with them, conversation, and he worked with many different people. And how this idea of, and I think the dialogue was with the artists, but also with the graphic designers, and you know what kind of relationship do you have with your, with the, not necessarily the clients, but I mean artists, or you told me you were working a lot with type designers, and how does it come up in your work? I mean, how is it part of your work, these collaborations? It's a question. No, I mean, it was a...
I could talk about le design participatif, la manière dont, sorry, I need to switch in French sometimes, but for sure, we work for clients, but we work with people for those clients, and it's really something which is very important in our studio. How you choose a good, the pickiest profile for a specific project. So we are surrounded by a lot of different skills, and it's a new adventure for every project. So for every project we build a new team, and so the collaborators we have with us is really super important in our practice. And for the relationship with client, I would say it's really like different every time, and we are multidisciplinary studio, so we have a lot of different partners and clients, and this is really a new story every time. It's a bit basic to say that, but yeah.
I'm sorry, I sometimes have to just mind before speaking. I think it's a luxury in this time. So sometimes you ask a question and you just have a minute for thinking. And I am just coming back from holidays, and during the way back in the train, I read your book, because to be honest, I didn't really knew or maybe too conscious of the importance of Pontus Hultén before I met you, because I think I made studies of graphic design without a deep teaching on art history, recent art history, and character history. I don't know actually what is the history of art characters. I really don't know it, actually. It's just with it's general culture. I mean, it's something we learn just reading, and it's not something we are being taught. So I just pick one phrase that really reson, how to say it in English? Echoes with what I feel. It's each graphic object has the right to have his own character and its own individuality, and it's because of the link between form and content. It's something really important for us. I mean, this idea of each project, each meeting with clients or collaborators is a different story, and it may grow something different at each time. So it's a question for us: what is our identity? I don't know if we have an identity actually, because I think I don't really care about that. The only problem is that the people, they like put you in cases, so sometimes I think it can be a problem maybe, I don't know for who, but I totally imagine that it could be. But for us, each project is an adventure, is an experiment, and is defined by the public, the client's identity. So that's like that.
Thank you. I have a question also for Stina again now, which might be a bit annoying, sorry. Congratulations for the book, for both the contents and the form. And how is it, did you feel about designing first a book about mostly graphic design, which might be intimidating, I mean it would be for me, and also your own research. What kind of freedom did it give you to be both the publisher, editor, author, graphic designer, copy editor maybe also, iconographer?
No, for that I have some I think, because I'm more comfortable designing than writing, I spend a lot of time, first of all thinking, but I spend a lot of, the challenge was really writing. I think creating, the structure with the chapters, I think this is easy because it's kind of quite similar to designing. It's to arrange content in different ways, but the actual writing, it was quite painful. So I think when I came to the stage that I was gonna design, it was not designing anymore. It was so natural. It was like already an energy that was inside. I didn't even think about I should design it like this, or it was an energy that
so
came.
the design came after you had finished the writing, or did you work on both simultaneously?
No.
No.
No. I wrote first, yeah. And I think, that's also something that I've been thinking a lot, because we were conceptual, so we also climbed a lot close to content. And we try to find our design answers inside the content. So I had this question that, how does it affect the design if I actually create the content myself? Could I actually design through writing?
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
Yeah.
If
Design through writing. So writing is a form of design.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe I can ask Olivia and Camille, because you do forms of research in which maybe the design is more integrated as being a part of the research itself, or how do you see that relationship between designing an object and researching?
It's true that we give a special space to research in our studio life, as long as it is possible. I think it's always a question of balance between how you earn your money and you run your studio, and what is the space can free for research. I don't know what is research actually. I would say that we try to have some non-profit time to do stuff with people, whatever the shape it can take, whatever the time it can take, but as soon as we have the time, we try to do it without thinking, okay, how it's gonna, what is the final shape and where we're gonna show it, and just doing things. Maybe this is research, I don't know. I think in France we are lucky because we have some spaces like residency program or like bourse that allows you to like work without knowing where it goes. And so we try to find those opportunities, and but for sure we work 2 times more than just running a studio. But yeah, we have a several research projects that we run for a couple of years now on different topics, like the question of learning through the action of play, especially for young audience, for kids, for teenage. We are really interested into the gender stereotypes as well, and inequalities, especially in the toy industry and the marketing of the toy industry. And also Camille started a big project which is Féminisme en forme for a couple of years ago, which is focused on the new activist medium and what is quelles sont les nouvelles formes en fait de création graphique activiste, féministe, de manifestation. So we have a lot of research subjects. I don't know what. To myself, I think my job is not really to be a graphic designer. I think really deeply that my job is mainly emancipating. That's what I was thinking about recently, because I think research and emancipation is the same thing, actually. It's finding something, you don't know what, and you don't know why, and you just try things. You just try things you never did before, and you just try things nobody asked you to do. I think it's something like that. So it's hard to describe it because I'm living it, so I'm not really objective about it, but I think, yes, we always try to emancipate from something, and it's always something different, and it's a process, I think. Something really existential.
Okay.
A libido question.
Can I tap into that?
Wasn't my intent, but yes, please.
Okay. No, but I find this like doing what nobody asked you to do. I find that really interesting. I feel like in my practice, I work a lot with artists, and then it's like quite unclear, like who is there commissioner? Are we the commissioner? Like I'm like being graphic designer, you also have certain skills. You're usually really good at making applications, handling a budget, making a good PDF. It also gives you kind of a power to sort of like become the institution. And I think a lot of projects that I do, you're sort of like not. And that's why I'm so happy when I was looking at your book, both in the way that you've made it, that you published it yourself, written it yourself, designed it yourself, but also like to put an emphasis on sort of this anarchist energy of Pontus Hultén, which is also about sort of not asking for permission. And I think that we live in a time when like, there aren't that many people like Pontus, who is also like a guard, sort of. That could be like talking to the people who have the money, talking to the people who have the position to sort of make, like, we want to make a catalog that's going to cost way too much. And he can make that happen. And then maybe the next catalog would be really simple to pay for the previous one. And I think that in today, that is really hard. Like you were really also mentioning that. And I think that is easier if you sort of like skip the institution altogether.
Okay. Also, you mentioned the idea of, the notion of playing in your work and the relationship to playfulness, which is, well, I think you mentioned kids, but I mean, play is not necessarily with or for kids, which is interesting because that's the title of this, or of the exhibition. I'm a bit confused. Yeah. Okay. So well, yeah, I was wondering about this notion of play, and I think the talk is called Keep Experimenting. Sorry, I mixed it a bit. Well, is experimenting playing? Is there what amount of experimentation and playfulness or not? Can all of you? Is that something that sounds to you, or whoever wants to start?
For us, we really try to keep alive childhood mindset, I think. We don't really know why. When you're a little child, you play, you learn playing, you learn experimenting, you learn drawing, painting, creating with your hands, and then in French we have le cours préparatoire, CP, and then suddenly you work, and the time
the time dedicated to creation becomes 1 hour a week. I just realized that recently, because we have 2 girls, and each one of us, and it reminds me something I lived when I was young. I really liked experiment, create, and suddenly you go to primary school, and suddenly life becomes awful. And I don't know, I think in Sweden it's different. I think education is not the same pattern as here. And I'm really in empathy with my daughter, who really was depressed by primary school. So I try to help her and to l'accompagner. And for us, first, it's really important to keep, we have this enormous luxury possibility to have to experiment with liberty. We have a lot of liberty. Actually, it's not given to anyone. It's a big chance. It's really, really precious. So, as we are lucky to have that, we just on entretient. And there is this in our work, and playing, always playing with words, playing with what we do, and invite public to play with what we do. And also there is another layer, which is, maybe you want to talk about that, is the importance of education in society, because we think adults are not really interesting because they are like they are. So, some of them change sometimes, they construct themselves, but a lot of them don't move anyway. So we prefer childs because childs are really mobile. They always changing their mindset, and they can understand a lot of things. So we really like to speak to them. And also we think it's the future generation of humans. So it might be something really important to care about. And personally, we both, we really trust in the importance to accord to the children, and in cultural places, but not only. So if we could choose, I think, I don't know, maybe we will always work with children, because I think it's here that there is something to do for the future. Adults are completely dead, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if there is a space where you need to engage yourself today, I think this is really in education, because to synthesize just that where it's gonna happen, and if we can change something in society, with today's kids. So it's but it's not something that we theorize that much. But it's just like our intuition is that working with kids is really enjoyable and important. So as soon as we can do it, we do it.
I also think, so can
Yes,
please. No, please. But I think I relate so much to that. And I also believe that grownups are dead. And I also believe that children are in contact with something that we probably lost. And education is sometimes the big problem. But I also think that, like, I read this text a few years back that really resonated with me. It's called The Professional Amateur. And it sort of talks about the importance of being an amateur. And the word amateur meaning somebody who loves. And how the opposite of being an amateur is to be a professional. And you can really get that. I think, like, we're all sort of in a position in our practices, I think, where we've been doing it for quite some time, have become professional. And sometimes you also notice that you become too professional. And I think that is also like the importance of collaboration and the importance of sort of getting out of your depth. And I think that is maybe partly why a lot of graphic designers are also sort of like getting these side interests, the research, the publishing, the experimentation. And I think that the need for play has a real importance in that.
No, completely. I think also there is, when we are artists, I think, and when we study, it's more of an artistic practice. And then once you become a professional, there is maybe not so much space or so much time sometimes to experiment or elaborate on things. So I think it's also to kind of try to reclaim that. And if we cannot do it within maybe more commercial jobs, it's also good to find your own playgrounds.
And there's also the similarity between graphic design and play, and that is rules. Like that we set up a framework in which things can happen. And it can be really playful.
So, I think we could go on for a while on that topic, but I just was curious to maybe also talk about the, I think, Stina, you mentioned the other day that, or you quoted Pontus Hultén saying the poster was the first encounter for the public with the exhibition. How does it sound today with, the printed poster? And I mean, how do we get the visual knowledge of an exhibition, or at least the first contact we have with an exhibition is obviously not very often the poster anymore. And what do you think of that? And do you work with the social networks, and is that interesting in itself? Is that something you try to explore or not? Or
I mean, I can more talk about the research, and I think what was the poster at the time, and what we can see in the show as well, it was also a way to say that the museum is open. It was not just to promote the individual exhibitions or the individual artists. It was also to say that, to talk about what modern art is, that it's a place for everyone, everyone is welcome. Because before the time that he was a director at the museum, a lot of galleries were quite closed. They were not really open spaces like we know them today.
But I think the question of showing that the museum is open is definitely an interesting, strong point.
And I mean, there has been a big shift. I'm sure you also, all of you have noticed that. Like, it used to be like the brief would usually be to make the poster and to make the different applications for the exhibition. But I think maybe 7 years ago, I noticed that it had become more about they wanted an exhibition logo. That was the phrase in Sweden. Like, you want an exhibition logo that can be applied in lots of different applications. That could also be animated. And suddenly that became the poster. And I think that we sort of live in a time now where sort of the profession of the graphic design is being sort of ripped into several pieces. And I think that's one of the pieces, to sort of be this very applicable thing, to make something that is applicable for a lot of context. And one thing is to be very specific. And I think with these posters that you were just talking about, the thing about them is that they're very specific. They're for a very specific context, and they're very thought through in that way.
Although the exhibition logo is not really new, I mean, there was some big exhibition in the 90s which had this idea of really a logotype for the exhibition. And then it seemed maybe it became less less common, but it was really this idea of making this exhibition big blockbusters. Yeah.
Okay, no. I totally get that. Yeah.
And when we think about printed material, we always think of things that are static in time. I mean, this book in 10 years will be the same book. And, but then we discussed briefly about that question of ephemera, of all these prints that are invitation cards, posters for exhibitions, because that's a context, and which most of them actually disappear. They're not so much collected, and how, you know, and there's this question of also the vitality, the sort of maybe playfulness that we can see in the exhibition, whether it seems that a lot of this material, I'm talking about the ephemera, seems very spontaneous, really done in 5 minutes. Maybe it took days and weeks maybe, but it looks so spontaneous, which is more difficult with the book, and which is most of the time preserved in libraries, collections. And how do you, I don't know, how do you feel about this kind of material, making books and other things that are not meant to last?
If I can talk some more, sorry, I'm just babbling. But like, I'm very into that distinction, and I think that they both have very clear roles to play. And I think coming back to roots, like this thing of making something very quickly and making something very thoroughly. Like making a book is a process that, for me at least, takes several years. That's how I work on the books that I work on. But I'm also like, I really love like playing these games. Last summer I was working on an exhibition in Boden, and then we designed sort of a publication on the night train to Boden, from Stockholm to Boden, which like we have that time. And then we sent it to the printer, and then it was printed in a day, and it was delivered. You know? And I think that that is also like, it is also a way to sort of capture a moment. And I think a book can sort of capture a moment, but it can't capture that kind of moment. And I think this like also relates to sort of graphic designers and other practitioners, artists, designers, craftspeople, like anyone really, also making their own theory and not having it be published in this aggrandized way, like putting it in a book. Then it can also be something that you just like chuck out. Maybe the podcast that sort of has that format, but it can also be something that's printed and it's also less ephemeral and more lasting. And that can be sort of a paper trail. I'm really into that idea.
I think that ephemera is a really nice name. And really poetic. And on one hand, it's I think it's something really cool because there is no pressure. Because when you create ephemeras, it's not noble objects, you know. They are not collected in the institution, not so much. I mean, when we are collected in an institution, we have un reçu fiscal. We don't have money, so...
a tax receipt.
Yeah. There is something really light, you know, really cool. And what I understand growing in my career is that it's better to create. You create because you want to create. You do to do. You don't do for anything else. So, and it's also what I observe as a teacher, because I am a teacher at l'ENSAD, l'École Nationale Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs, since 2 years. So it's quite new for me. And I observe the master students last grade, and they are really into that. They create to create. They do to do, not for anything else.
And I think the fact that there is no pressure into ephemera creation is something that gives you kind of the souplesse, liberty, and I think it's quite precious actually. And in another hand, if you compare printed matters with web supports that were really innovating in the early the beginning of internet. I mean, the first websites that have been made by artists, or not artists but designers mostly. There were some, I remember some really interesting experiments and proposals, and now there is no more traces of that. I mean, it just remains in my memory, and I think like that printed matters are a step just more classical, because you have you still have a trace. If you don't care about ephemera, you just don't care. If you don't care about books, you don't care, but they are somewhere. And you know, there is the I don't know if you know this pathology, the syndrome that does exist. Le syndrome de Eugène. Voilà. There is people who keeps alive all these things, whatever. It could be supermarket flyer, it could be a museum flyer, I don't know, but I like the idea that there is people who are mainly considered as nuts, but who keep this, you know, and it exists. It's like a museum, you know, of ephemera things, and I'm really interested into visiting people who have this disease because of that. And about internet, it's really interesting because the first website I created was really experimental, and I don't have any traces, so it's just living in my head. And also the other experimental websites I've seen at this time. And I think it's really nice to keep something alive just in the mind.
There's a short there.
Oh, what happens?
The video short. Okay, I think we should, thanks a lot. I think we should keep a bit of time for the audience to address some questions if they have, or remarks. So because we want to keep a little bit of time for people who haven't seen the pop-up exhibition upstairs.
The pigeons are fucking.
Hello and thank you. When I saw the exhibition inside, I was surprised by how some pieces were extremely contemporary. It could have been made yesterday or tomorrow. But I also really enjoyed the materiality of the objects produced. And I was thinking some of the printed matters would be very difficult to produce today, I think. And I don't know, I don't really have a question, but I thought it was bouncing to the question of how we are shifting in a more digital world. And I think also to react to what you were saying, Camille, about how in the beginning internet was more experimental, but it's also because we are also sliding into the area of templates and the freedom of the experimentation in the material, I think. Do you have that, or this feeling?
Stina, would you like to, or anyone? Don't forget.
Sorry, the question is our practice now.
Yeah. Well, you can talk about the exhibition, but also your practice, because I wanted also to know what you have taken from Pontus into your own work.
Yeah, I mean, I think materiality is extremely important. I think that's also why I fell in love with the objects. I think at the time a lot of the designers were really closely linked to the printers. Some designers were also printers. And I think that made, I mean, partly to also break the rules that we talked about, it's also to really knowing what is the structure, what can we break. And I think especially Hubert Johansson, I think was one of the designers. He was running a printing practice called Tryckeri AB Björkmans Efterträde, and he really played with material. I think it's really, because he also created some booklets where he showed his type, and papers that is used for those booklets are extraordinary. And then also I think in 1995 not Pontus, but Lutz Jahre, that was the librarian of the Bundeskonsthalle, he wrote a book on Pontus catalogs. And for that book, Pontus was still alive, so he wrote the text, and he talks a great deal about the aura that you mentioned a little bit. That's the most important. It was the most important for him. That you can really feel the spirit of the artist or the subject or even the maker to kind of really come across. So obviously to get an aura across a printed object, you have to work with the material. I think, for me it's really the tactility of an object is extremely important. I think it can say and convey a lot of messages through the materiality. Obviously now we're standing in maybe a time when we question the materials that we use. What can we do to reduce, to maybe be a bit more environmental. Now we kind of add another, it's not just about inventing or finding new ways or new materials, it's also to balance it with how can we make it better for the future. I don't know if it answers.
If I could also add to that, I think that it's also really interesting, I think, to think about graphic design always in relation to technology. What happens with technology? There was a book designer that told me once that there were only two periods where a lot happened with books. It's the 15th and 16th centuries and the 17th, and also in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Those are times where huge technological innovations took place around books. And I think you can see a lot of that in these catalogs in the exhibition, that they're also about people being in relation to the press, and about people being in relation to a photocopier and a paste up board, and production is changing, so the design is also changing. And I think some of my favorite things in this exhibition are these really early things, the student magazines, Blandaren from the 50s, and I think that's to me, when I saw that the first time, I was this is early internet. This is just people going in, just having no idea about what they're doing. Putting dancing hamsters and blinking lights and everything on a website, but they're doing the opposite. So that's really intriguing to me.
I had two things to say, if it's not too long. No. The first one is, I think, the most beautiful thing a children can have into his hands is a book. And it's something really precious and something I am thinking about really often, because I live in a neighborhood in Paris which is quite poor, and all the children, my child doesn't have screen, you know, because the educators say it's not good for health, so they always tell to the children they don't not to watch too much TV and watch too much screens. So my daughter tell me really often that the teacher said it's not good for health, etc. There is lots on their shoulder actually today. And all the other children, they exclude her because she doesn't know influencers and she don't know YouTube. So we speak about that really often, and but it's not so really. It's not important for her. I mean, she doesn't like that, and she don't care actually. I'm always thinking, well, it's love time for birds. And I always thinking about these children who watch IA on YouTube every day, and I'm quite sad actually that they can have books to just emancipate themselves, because the most beautiful present I had in my life, I think, one of the most, was books, because my father is a book collector, a really intense book collector. It means that each day he buys 5 or 10 books, and it drives my mother completely mad, because their space is surrounded by books and there is not enough shelves, you know. They are always building shelves to put the books, and he doesn't really read it because he's too old and sick. But I like the fact that I grew up into a giant library, and I think it was the most beautiful present I had, because I really love books and I want to just transmit that, to share that. And there is children in my neighborhood who are really far from that, and we are, when in what we do, we try to give paper to the children, to just let them appreciate the quality of paper, and appreciating the quality of paper can help to appreciate a printed stuff, a book, any book. And one of the most beautiful piece of art I had is this book of Bruno Munari, which is called Primi Libri, and it's a collector book, I think. And it's a big book with, maybe you know it, there is, I think, something like 20 little books with different materials and different ways to manipulate them, and different ways that narrative is created, and with fabrics and wood, and I think it's a really magnificent object, and I always bring it to my students who like books, and to the children, every children like it. Even the children who don't have books at their home. That's the first thing I wanted to say. I don't know if it's interesting, but... And the other thing is that each epoch has his revolutions, and to me, to myself, what brings the internet is actually network. And I remember MySpace, and when I just finished my studies, it was the big time of MySpace. And I made a lot of experimenting stuff with code on MySpace. And I remember on my page, I put a GIF GIF that was repeated hundreds of times, and it was written hello with in bar, a line with the same color as the background that was sparkling, clignoté, je sais pas si c'est ça, sparkling. And, flashing, yes, and it says hello, and then blue, hello, and then blue. And it was really interesting how I create a family with this tool, MySpace. And I remember I met Pierre, which is here, who is here, with his MySpace page. I remember your MySpace page. And there were also the Charlotte's MySpace page. There were a mirror, yeah. Now they had Pierre, which was a D, and Charlotte, which was a C, and it was a half circle, plain, with just black. And I repaired them on MySpace like that, and I repaired many designers I didn't know because they were not living in Paris, and I think at this time you were living in Toulouse. And I met a lot of designers with MySpace, and people who are now like my family, you know. And that was wonderful, the way that internet could connect you to people you don't meet in real. So I'm quite between the importance of the material thing and also the importance of what brings the immateriality of internet into our way to create, and because for us being alone is not really stimulating. We really like meet people, and it's into discussion between people that the best ideas. We really believe in collective intelligence, for example, which is a really recent concept into business.
Thank you. Do you have two things to add?
Wow. Now, to be short, the materiality is cool because it's a way of feeling your body, and it's something that we are maybe losing today. So I think this is the interest with books and everything, that you are in the present moment with your body and dans l'instant présent. The present.
Maybe we should leave a bit of room to the audience to ask questions.
Thank you for the presentation and the discussion. It was very interesting. And I don't know much about design, so it was a very nice way to learn a little bit about people who make new ways, create new ways of working and creating. So that was interesting. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the stuff about children and adults being dead, because I thought it was a little bit of a weird thing to say for a few reasons. But I think most of all it was because it's maybe a weird message to send both to children and adults, maybe, because I think adults have a lot to give, and giving up on people who are the present is not necessarily the solution. To just focus on people who will be the present at some point, to just discard them at the moment they will be adults. And also because, yes, a lot of adults have a lot to give, and they are the people who can do things right now. So I think it's maybe it's a loss to just not consider that and only see in children something that we don't have when it's just a different way to experience the world. And I think maybe being an adult is way easier than being a child also. So I wouldn't say adults are necessarily dead. Also that maybe we should put more faith in people who are actually able to face the world and use it and create in it right now. But yeah, I don't know if you have a lot more to say about that.
I must say that I regret
deeply. Sometimes I have a reflex to say like a provocative, humoristic, no filter thing, but I think it was totally a shitty idea. I mean, it's nonsense. Because actually, we really believe in multi-generational work. And we like adults, actually, but in a way of deconstructing, children are more powerful. But also, I may say that I really appreciate all people. Actually, we are really focused into people who are more rejected in society. I think children. Now the world is more talking about that subject, but children are kind of rejected in the society, so it's not really nice. And when you are a parent, you really feel that, and it's like you feeling sad. But also the old people. The old people is the same. It's maybe worse, I think.
But I feel like if maybe adults would focus more so on adults than on children, it would be easier for the children to then become functioning part of society and not just live through a generational trauma of adulthood is so difficult and we don't want to do it, but we're doing it because we have to, and that's just the message that from a child's perspective we are getting. Not that we're children anymore, but we were children not that long ago, so yeah.
I also regret catching on to what you said, obviously, but I think it's also like it's a way of like playing also. Like it's a very playful thing to just like throw out to think about. So I think a lot of what we're talking about today is also like how to sort of resist that, like these conventions that are a very big part of like the profession of a graphic designer. And I think it's sort of like thinking about sort of how to avoid the dead is also really important.
Thank you. I think we're going to save time for people who haven't seen the exhibitions to have a chance to see them. They are open until 9, right? And yeah, we think the cafe is open. So we can maybe proceed.
The cafe is open until 9:30 and the exhibition is until 9, so please go check it out.
So thanks a lot, Stina, Oskar, Camille, and Olivia.